We start with the news out of Cleveland from this morning, the stunner. Deshaun Watson. We knew about the ankle injury coming out of the game against the Ravens, and he played through it. We didn't know that he had what they're calling a new shoulder injury, a fracture, and it looks like it's, when you have, they call it a subluxation, a dislocation, the joint pops out and goes back in. And the issue is what damage was done on the way out, what damage was done on the way back in. It sounds like this was a fracture of the structure into which the joint fits. Not a huge fracture, but a problem. Now, they're calling it a new injury. And without access to medical records or MRIs and hey, someone explained to me today, a lot of times you can't even see this thing. It's possible it's been there. And I'm not laying blame on anyone. All I'm saying is, given the nature of this injury, it may have just been that he got hit on Sunday and it aggravated it in a way that caused them to take a closer look and they saw this fracture. Or maybe the fracture was slight and it got a little bit worse. Because this goes all the way back to week 4 when they played the Ravens the first time. He was medically cleared. And those were the two most unfortunate words used by any team all year long, saying he was medically cleared. That created an expectation that he would play, and it created frustration by some outside and maybe some inside the organization that he was choosing not to play when he could have. Now, if it was this fracture that had been there all along, he shouldn't have been medically cleared. Regardless, he's not going to be playing again for the rest of the 2023 season. And they say he'll be ready to go for the start of 2024. And I'm sorry, but I got to do something about my text messages that come through my computer while I do this. Some days, there's a lot of them. This, I have a feeling, is going to be one of those days where you hear the ding multiple times. So I apologize in advance for my dinging. So there's a lot going on now as we move forward with the Browns. And it's unfortunate that the trade for Deshaun Watson and the contract for Deshaun Watson will be judged in part by the fact that this injury wipes him out for the rest of the season. But that's one of the inherent risks for any quarterback. So when you make that move, $46 million a year, 5-year contract, every penny guaranteed, and you give up 3 first-round picks, 22, 23, 24, and 3 mid-round picks, you're putting all your eggs in that one basket. And if that basket breaks, you got a problem. That's one of the reasons not to do this. Regardless of anything about Deshaun Watson and the off-field issue, it's a lot to give up financially, and it's a lot to give up by way of low-cost draft picks. It would have been 6 different players, 6 opportunities to get guys who can end up being a key part of your nucleus going forward. They put all the eggs in the basket has broken, and now they're through 2 of 5 years, 40% of the contract, and what have they gotten in return? Nothing. Next year, it's going to be more pressure on everybody to get more out of Deshaun Watson and to keep him healthy. If next year is a washout, then we are very close to saying the trade was a complete and total failure. Not quite on the level of Herschel Walker, but pretty damn close. But still, chapters left in this book. All we know is chapter 1 didn't work out well. Chapter 2 didn't work out well. Chapter 3, 4, 5, we'll see. Will he be there beyond the expiration of his current 5-year contract? We'll see. Now, remember, one of the reasons this is year 2, not year 1, is because he wasn't suspended for a full season last year. And there's been that chatter. It's been lingering. It's out there. The idea that some owners didn't want him to be suspended for a full year, wanted him to be suspended, but not so long that it let the Browns push the whole contract back a year and treat 2023 as year 1. So 24 would be 2, 23 would be 5. It would run through 2027. As it stands, it runs through 2026. So they're stuck. 3 more years, 24, 25, 26. $46 million fully guaranteed per year, and they don't have the benefit of this young group of players who could be ascending, assuming that you exercise the draft picks properly. So they got a problem. Now, what are they going to do? Mary Kay Cabot reported earlier today, she's with the Cleveland Plain Dealer, rookie Dorian Thompson-Robinson, 5th-round pick, who started that Ravens game. He's back under center. And it's a little surprising because PJ Walker was the quarterback when they beat the 49ers. No small feat. And he was the quarterback the day they almost beat the Seahawks. No small feat. But they see something apparently in the rookie that causes them to believe that the interests of the team are better suited by putting him under center. And I'll say this in his defense. I don't think he thought he was going to play that day against the Ravens week 4. All week long, Deshaun Watson says, I'm playing. They believed he was playing. Dorian Thompson-Robinson believed Watson was playing. Remember, I've said this before. I got a text just after 5 o'clock Eastern that Sunday. People on the team were thinking, what's going on here? Why did Deshaun Watson say he was going to play? Why didn't he play? And there was some confusion and frustration about it. And then we find out he was medically cleared, supposedly. So that just adds to this mess. But it helps explain why Thompson-Robinson maybe wasn't as ready as he would have been if he's thinking all week long, Deshaun is going to play. I'm getting some practice reps. That's great, but I'm not playing. Now, there's Macy walking around back there. Now he knows as of Wednesday, and he probably knew last night. And it is amazing the Browns kept this under wraps. Usually this is the kind of thing that a team uses as currency with the insiders who are in a position to influence people on a given team. We never get a bad tweet. We never get any criticism if we hand to Shefty or the NFL media crew 5 minutes before the announcement this news. And that would have been huge. That would have been big engagement and, a lot of, hey, oh, congratulations, you broke the news. Yeah, they called you 5 minutes beforehand or they texted you and told you what they were going to announce in 5 minutes. Surprised they didn't do it. I think it's just evidence of how kind of shell-shocked the Browns were that now Deshaun Watson's done for the year. So the question becomes, what can they do by way of external quarterback options? We wrote about this at PFT. There aren't many free agents out there, and the ones who are out there for a reason. There are some guys who are retired or not officially retired, but they're retired, like Matt Ryan. Phillip Rivers hasn't played since 2020. Tom Brady's out there. It's kind of compelling to think about him playing for the Browns. Kind of fun to think about him riding in on a white horse to try to save the season, but I don't think that's in the cards. The possibility of either Ryan Tannehill or Jimmy Garoppolo being released and ending up with the Browns is something to at least consider. You would say, what's in it for the Raiders or the Titans to release Garoppolo or Tannehill, respectively? There's one way that this benefits them. And this would be a violation of the rules if this happened, but so what? I'm sure things like this have happened from time to time in the NFL. If the Browns tell the Titans, we'll start with them. If you release Ryan Tannehill, we'll claim the balance of his contract on waivers and you will avoid the remainder of his $27 million salary for this year, which as a practical matter is guaranteed because he's a vested veteran. If he gets cut during the season, he files a claim for termination pay, he gets the rest of his money. If he's claimed on waivers, the Titans are free and clear. The Titans are off the hook. That's a benefit to the Titans. Now, if they just let him go and they think, well, no one's going to claim the balance of his contract on waivers, why the hell would we do it? If he passes through waivers, they still have to pay that money. And he can make whatever he would get as a free agent, a little double dip action. If the Browns are interested in Tannehill, the thing to do is approach them. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying it's within the rules. It probably isn't. But you either want to win games or you don't. That's the attitude some teams have. You let the Titans know through a conversation that never happened, if you release him, we'll claim him on waivers. So then the Titans say, well, we can save, $12 million is $12 million. We can kick that over to next year on the salary cap. We can do a lot with that money. I think it's $12 million, the balance of the contract for the final 8 weeks of the regular season. So that's a possibility. And if I'm Ryan Tannehill and I want to play, yeah, hey, Titans, let me go. Same thing for Jimmy Garoppolo. Hey, I want to play, let me go. Now, there's an even greater benefit to the Raiders if he would be claimed on waivers because the balance of his contract this year is guaranteed and there's $11.25 million next year fully guaranteed. The Raiders would avoid that as well. And they benched him. They're done with him. So if the Browns would say, wink, nod, conversation that never happened, burner phone to burner phone, if you release him, we'll claim him on waivers. That would be a way it would happen. So those are a couple of alternatives that are viable. It would take a violation of the rules, but all's fair when you've got a team that's 6-3, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying I condone it. I'm not saying I would do it. But I've been around this business long enough to know that the rules get broken. And I've been around this business long enough to know the conversations that shouldn't happen do happen. Tampering is rampant. It's easy to justify breaking a little rule here or there because you just say everybody does it. And this is a simple one. We're just letting them know. Hypothetically, if you would release your starting quarterback who's been benched, who's due a lot of money over the rest of this year and or into next year, if we're talking about Garoppolo, we'll claim him on waivers. And the Browns have the cap space to do it. I think Tannehill makes more sense because you would want to be done with Tannehill after this year. What's the point in having $11.25 million fully guaranteed to Jimmy Garoppolo for next year? There's no reason to have that because Deshaun Watson's coming back. Now, looking at the issue of backup quarterbacks more generally, and I think of Josh Dobbs as the prime example here. He was available in trade by the Cardinals just before the trade deadline. The Vikings got him for a 6th-round pick, and this is the bargain basement deal right now in the NFL. Player plus a 7th-round pick for a 6th-round pick. What is that? That's nothing. You're in total crapshoot range of the draft at that point. You're hardly giving up anything to get the player. Why would the Cardinals do that first and foremost? Why would they do that? If Kyler Murray gets hurt, it's Clayton Tune time again, and we saw how that went. Why would you give up Josh Dobbs? For 1-round upgrade? And why weren't more teams involved in it? As I mentioned on PFT earlier today, Josh Dobbs told me himself after the win over the Falcons that his agent told him it was either the Vikings or the Browns who would be trading for him. There was a second team other than the Vikings. Dobbs' agent thought it was the Browns. I did a little digging today. I'm told it ended up not being the Browns. It was another team. Don't know who, but it wasn't the Browns. Why weren't the Browns in it? They only have themselves to blame if this doesn't work with Dorian Thompson-Robinson or PJ Walker or whoever they happen to grab off the street, Dresser Wynn, Tanner Morgan, or maybe Morgan Tanner, Brett Rippon. And I've communicated with some folks about the attitude and the mindset. And I think a couple of different factors go into this. One, there's laziness. And I don't want to accuse coaches generally of being lazy. I'm not saying anyone's lazy. You can't make it in that world if you're truly lazy. You have to work. But it's a question of how much work you're going to put in. How much work do we need to put in? How much work do we want to put in? We've got a guy, next man up, ready to go, knows the system, knows the personnel, knows the plays, knows the strategies, knows us. We know him. It's simple. It's easy. It's the path of least resistance. Or you can acquire a potential upgrade who has to be taught the system, who has to be taught the plays, who has to be taught the names of his teammates, who you may not know at all. No connection to him, quite possibly. A lot of elbow grease goes into that path. That's the path the Vikings embraced. That's the path the Browns shunned. Now, if this had happened a few weeks ago with Deshaun Watson, would they have traded for Josh Dobbs or Jacoby Brissett? Maybe. But at the time the trade deadline came in, well, we didn't know what was up with Deshaun Watson. I think it was reasonable at that point to assume you better have plan B ready. And you better ask yourself, is Dorian Thompson-Robinson or PJ Walker the best plan B we can have? Or should we try to get somebody better? Should we try to get Jacoby Brissett? Hey, Washington's having a fire sale. They're trading away Montez Sweat. They're trading away Chase Young. Let's call them up. Let's get Jacoby Brissett. What would it take? 4th-round pick? Sold. Josh Dobbs. Well, we know something better than a 6 plus Dobbs and a 7 would have gotten it done with Arizona. The other element is this, and it's a cousin to laziness. It's complacency. It's excuse making. It's accepting the reality that, for example, what they could have done in Minnesota. Hey, Kirk Cousins is out for the year. Season's over. That's that. Let's just go forward with who we have, and we'll make our plans for 2024. They didn't do that. They weren't content to do that. They weren't content to squander what at the time felt like an opportunity to be relevant this year. And it worked. Look at the Jets in contrast. The moment Aaron Rodgers tears his Achilles tendon, 4 plays into 2023, the Jets just decide to stay the course. Now, I think Rodgers' intent on returning and the fact that he kind of hovers over the organization, takes a lot of oxygen out of the room, and is a big personality, I think that made it very difficult to even consider making a trade for a Ryan Tannehill, making a trade for a Kirk Cousins, getting someone to upgrade over Zach Wilson, knowing that that guy potentially gets sent to the bench when daddy's home. But, I mean, let's be realistic. Rodgers is coming back next year. Well, do we think they're going to fire Robert Saleh? Do we think they're going to fire Joe Douglas? If Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas were the coaches that were and GM that were present when Rodgers arrived, and probably wouldn't want one or both of them gone for next year? I don't think so. I think those guys are safe, and they've been safe. And again, I'm not putting it all on that, because I do think the most overlooked factor in this entire question of what the Jets are doing or not doing at quarterback is the reality that Aaron Rodgers wants to come back at some point. And the irony here, and I think I'm using the word correctly, I never know, but the irony is their desire to keep a light on for Aaron Rodgers is basically going to cause them to fail to pay the electricity bill, and the light's going to be off. That's kind of where the Jets are right now. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.